Hatshepsut was one of the most powerful women in the ancient world. She was the fifth pharaoh of the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, and she ruled longer than any other woman in Egyptian history. She was married to her sickly half-brother Thutmose II, and the two of them began to co-rule after the death of their father Thutmose I. In 1479 BC Thutmose II died, and in 1458 BC Hatshepsut continued to rule by herself until her own death. She commissioned many building projects and re-established trade networks. She also led a large-scale expedition to the land of Punt, a wealthy and sophisticated country to the south of Egypt. She is also believed to have led successful military campaigns during her reign. Fu Hao, or Lady Hao, she died in 1200 BC, was one of the many wives of King Weding of the Shang dynasty, and unusually for the time, also served as a military general and high priestess. Her tomb was unearthed at Inxa. She is shown to have led numerous military campaigns. The Tufang had fought against the Shang for generations until they were finally defeated by Fu Hao in a single decisive battle. Further campaigns against the neighboring Yi, Qing and Ba followed. The latter is particularly remembered as the earliest recorded large-scale ambush in Chinese history. With up to 13,000 soldiers and important generals, she was the most powerful Shang general of her time. She also controlled her own fiefdom on the borders of the empire. She died before King Weding, and he constructed a tomb for her on the edge of the royal cemetery at his capital Yin. The tomb was unearthed by archaeologists in 1976. Cleopatra II was a queen and co-ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt with her brother husbands and her daughter between 175 BC until 116 BC. She led a rebellion against Ptolemy VIII in 131 BC and drove him and Cleopatra III out of Egypt. At this time Ptolemy VIII murdered both his stepson Ptolemy and his own son Ptolemy Memphis. Ptolemy VIII is said to have had his son dismembered and his head, hands and feet sent to Cleopatra II in Alexandria as a birthday present. Cleopatra II, she ruled Egypt from 130 to 127 BC when she was forced to flee to Syria, where she joined her daughter Cleopatra Thea and her son-in-law Demetrius to Nicator. A public reconciliation of Cleopatra and Ptolemy VIII was declared in 124 BC. After this she ruled jointly with her brother and daughter until 116 BC when Ptolemy died, leaving the kingdom to Cleopatra III. Cleopatra II herself died shortly after. Amenarrenas was a queen of the Meroitic kingdom of Kush. She reigned from about 40 BC until 10 BC. She is one of the most famous candidates because of her role leading Kushite armies against the Romans in a war that lasted 5 years, from 27 BC until 22 BC. After an initial victory when the Kushites attacked Roman Egypt, they were driven out of Egypt by Gaius Petronius and the Romans established a new frontier at Hyrsicamenus, Maharakat. Amenarrenas was described as brave and blind in one eye. The first battles, when Aelius Gallus, chief magistrate of Egypt, was absent on a campaign in Arabia in 24 BC, the Kushites launched an attack on Egypt. Amenarrenas and Achaemenid defeated Roman forces at Syene and Philae, and drove the Jews from Elephantine Island. They returned to Kush with prisoners and loot, including several statues of Emperor Augustus. The queen buried a bronze likeness of the emperor beneath the entranceway to her palace so that she and all who came and went could tread on the head of her enemy. Agrippina the Elder, she life in 14 BC until 17 October AD 33, also referred to as Agrippina Major, which is Latin for the elder, was a distinguished Roman woman, and a prominent member of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Agrippina is regarded in ancient and modern historical sources as a Roman matron, with a reputation as a great woman, who had an excellent character, and had outstanding Roman morals. She was a dedicated, supporting wife and mother who looked out for the interests of her children and the future of her family. She was the first Roman woman of the Roman Empire to have traveled with her husband to Roman military campaigns, to support, and live with the Roman legions. Agrippina was the first Roman matron to have more than one child from her family to reign on the Roman throne. Boudicca was a queen of the British Celtic Iceni tribe, who led an uprising against the occupying forces of the Roman Empire, in AD 60 or 61, and died shortly after its failure. When the Roman governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus was campaigning on the island of Anglesey off the northwest coast of Wales, Boudicca led the Iceni, the Trinovanes, and others in revolt. They destroyed Camulodunum, modern Colchester. Upon hearing of the revolt, Suetonius hurried to Londinium, modern London. The Romans, having concluded that they lacked sufficient numbers to defend the settlement, evacuated and abandoned Londinium. Boudicca led 100,000 Iceni, Trinovanes, and others to fight Legionem Hispana, and burnt and destroyed Londinium, and Verulamium. Suetonius stated that her army contained more women than men. She is considered a British folk hero. Julia Domna, she life in 170 until 217 AD, she was a Roman empress of Syrian origins, the second wife of Emperor Septimius Severus. She was born in Emesa in the Roman province of Syria. As the emperor's wife, she received the titles of Augusta, and Mother of the Army Camps. She was famous for her prodigious learning as well as her extraordinary political influence. While her emperor husband was fighting rivals, pursuing rebels, and subduing revolts in the far corners of the empire, Julia Domna was left to administer the vast Roman Empire. During this trip, Caracalla was assassinated and succeeded by Macrinus. Julia chose to commit suicide after hearing about the rebellion, perhaps a decision hastened by the fact that she was suffering from breast cancer, and her body was brought to Rome. In Syria, she is fondly remembered as a strong-willed empress, and a patron of learning and the arts, and Syrians view the fact that a Syrian woman rose to the Roman Empire's throne as a part of Syrian nationalism. Septimia Zenobia, she life in 240 until 274 AD, she was a 3rd century queen of the Syria-based Palmyrene Empire. She was wife of Odenathus, king of Palmyra. After Odenathus' assassination, Zenobia became the regent of her son Vabalathus, and held de facto power throughout his reign. In 270 AD, Zenobia launched an invasion which brought most of the Roman East under her sway and culminated with the annexation of Egypt. However, in reaction to Roman Emperor Aurelian's campaign in 272 AD, Zenobia declared her son emperor and assumed the title of empress, declaring Palmyra's secession from Rome. The Romans were victorious after heavy fighting. The queen was besieged in her capital and captured by Aurelian, who exiled her to Rome where she spent the remainder of her life. Zenobia was a cultured monarch and fostered an intellectual environment in her court, which was open to scholars and philosophers. She was tolerant toward her subjects, and protected religious minorities. The queen maintained a stable administration which governed a multicultural, multi-ethnic empire. Zenobia died after 274 AD, and she is a national hero in Syria.